Agency members, staff, and members of the public, we welcome you to today's commission meeting, May 12th, day 1 of 2 days of CTC commission meetings. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Eager.
Here.
Commissioner Grisby.
Present.
Commissioner Guardino.
Present.
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni. Chair Norton.
Present.
Senator Newman.
Here.
Assemblymember Friedman. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Douglas, could you please read the instructions for today's meeting? Douglas, we can't hear you.
Sorry, everyone. I thought we were waving to someone else in the room, not me. All right, here we go. Welcome to the May 2021 CTC virtual meeting. Please note that because this is a 2-day meeting, you will need to use a separate link to attend the meeting tomorrow. The links can be found on the first page of the meeting agenda on our website. Please use the questions tab if you have questions about this. Please note the Commission's meeting agenda is located under the Handouts tab and can be downloaded and saved during the webinar as needed. It can also be found on the Commission's website. For our Commissioners, should you have any questions or comments during our meeting, please let us know by raising your hand or otherwise get our attention on your camera and wait for the chair to call upon you. You can also send inquiries and comments through the Questions tab that can be read to presenters and the audience on your behalf if desired. Please mute your microphone except when you intend to speak to minimize outside noise and feedback. The chair will do her best to call on each of you in turn. We hope that you will turn on your camera while speaking if you have one. Because this meeting is not an in-person meeting, every vote will need to be a roll call vote. Staff will group items for votes to help save time. Please only speak when called upon. When called upon, please state your name and briefly make your point. I would ask that no one speak a second time on any one item until everyone who wishes to speak a first time has done so. For our presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. We hope that you'll also turn on your camera during your presentation if you have one. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as part of each item at this meeting. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as early into the item as you can to give the system time to acknowledge you. For participants joining us through the GoToWebinar system, please find the webinar panel likely located to the right-hand side of your screen. There you will also find a Questions, Audio, and Handouts tab. Under the Audio tab, attendees will have the choice to listen via computer or telephone option. Should you prefer the computer option, please ensure the appropriate box is selected. If you choose the phone call option, select the corresponding box and dial the phone number, access code, and audio pin as directed by the automated system. Please note that if the audio pin is not entered, you will remain in listen-only mode and will be unable to speak to the Commission should you have a comment. As a reminder, each attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These cannot be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee. There are 2 options for participants to provide comments on the agenda. The first option we prefer you use is to click the hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment. You will then be unmuted and called upon to make your comment. Please be sure to state your name and affiliation prior to voicing your remarks. Alternately, you may use the Questions tab, type in the agenda's item number and that you are commenting on and your comment. Commission staff will read your comment on your behalf. Please do your best to be concise with your comments. Please also make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. A timer may be displayed on screen during your public comments. You will not be able to be on camera while making comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Douglas. And with that, could we please take items 2 through 4 together?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the March 24th, 25th, 2021 meeting. Item 3 is approval of minutes from the April 8th, 2021 Joint California Transportation Commission, Department of Housing and Community Development, and California Air Resources Board meeting. Item number 4 is the Commissioners' meeting for compensation. Staff recommends your approval.
Thank you. Are there any commissioner comments or public comment on these items?
Motion to approve, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby,
Aye.
Commissioner Gordino,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni, Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will now turn to our Commission Executive Director, Mitch Weiss, for his report.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'd like to start by letting everyone know that we have a token of our appreciation for former Commission ex officio member Jim Frazier that we'll be sending him, just to show everybody what it is.
Nice.
Yeah, this bill acknowledges his hard work and efforts in passing Senate Bill 1 and his commitment to improving transportation infrastructure across the state. Since he is unfortunately not here to receive it today, we'll be sending it to him along with the invitation to join us at a future meeting so that we can acknowledge his commendable contributions in person. We have several policy matters on today's agenda related to transportation funding, and I wanted to, just at a very high level, give a little perspective on a few of those, and we'll go into, of course, the detail individually later on the agenda. Compared to where we were a year ago, looking back, we were facing tremendous funding uncertainties. We're certainly in a much better spot today. A significant part of that reason is thanks to our federal partners who provided much needed assistance backfilling lost revenues for both transit and highway programs. Additionally, our state transportation revenues had been recovering since last spring, and Caltrans will be providing us an update on this. But despite these improvements to our funding outlook, I do want to emphasize that we are still down in revenues due to the pandemic. The lost revenues have not fully been backfilled. And I think it's important to highlight that we have significant unmet funding needs that existed even before the pandemic. One of the main reasons is the federal government has not done enough over the last couple of decades to ensure adequate transportation funding. Unlike California and over 24 states, which have increased transportation funding by raising new revenues, the federal gas tax has been static for over 25 years now. A big reason why, as you heard at our last, that's a big reason why, but also as you heard at our last meeting, there's still a shortfall in highway maintenance and rehabilitation funding. SB 1 did not fully close the funding shortfall because it was expected we'd have some federal help also. Thankfully, we're seeing a lot of promise at the federal level with the proposed American Jobs Plan and the FAST Act reauthorization. While these proposals are certainly big and bold, we need to keep in mind that they are long overdue investments from the federal government. California has showed tremendous leadership on transportation funding with the passage of SB 1, which has done much to fix our infrastructure over the last few years. And right now, there's a unique opportunity to increase state transportation funding with one-time funds from the state's very significant unanticipated general fund surplus. We'll have a discussion today about our request for a $2 billion one-time augmentation from the state surplus for the severely oversubscribed active transportation program, which could be used to fund many very valuable projects that have already been reviewed, putting the money to work quickly to help advance our climate equity goals and create jobs. Later on the agenda, we'll have another informational item on CalSTA's Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, or CAPTI. As you heard at our last meeting, this plan is intended to advance California's commitment to climate change and other state goals through specific actions and strategies. Since that time, at the direction of the Commission, staff held 2 public workshops to receive comment on each specific strategy action included in the draft document. Both workshops were well attended, with over 226 attendees at the first and 167 at the second. All attendees were allowed to speak on each item as long as they wished, and we also took written comments that were read aloud. We had a number of different perspectives, and I think this really highlighted the value of our workshop process for gathering public input and helping decision makers. I'd also like to highlight that we convened the first Equity Advisory Roundtable that was held virtually on April 21st. There were about 75 attendees in total, including 15 roundtable members. After introductions and consideration of the roundtable's charter, we dived into a discussion of public engagement best practices. We received some very thoughtful and helpful comments from the roundtable members, and we plan to continue this conversation at the next roundtable meeting on May 26th, which will be held virtually. Today, we'll hear from one of the roundtable members, Naila Pope-Harden, reporting back on that first meeting. Finally, commissioners, I have a few updates on upcoming meetings and on staffing. Next Friday, May 21st, the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee will meet virtually. Then on June 23rd and 24th, we'll have our next regular commission meeting, which we're also going to be holding virtually. We're looking towards August to develop a way to hold some kind of hybrid meeting so that we can at least partially be in person, and we'll keep you posted on how that might look. I'd also like to welcome 2 new staff and 1 returning staff member. First, Justin Behrens has joined the commission as our Assistant Deputy Director for Legislation and Finance. Justin previously served as an Executive Fellow at CalSTA and a staff for the Assembly Transportation Committee. He's also worked as a management consultant for utility companies. Second, Penny Davis has joined the commission as a retired annuitant to serve as our legal counsel. Penny is an attorney with 28 years of legal practice, including 20 years as a state attorney for the state of California, primarily supporting child welfare policy. She retired from the California Department of Social Services in 2017. Lastly, James Malinowski has returned to the commission and rejoined our administration team. He'll be taking over for Peyton Maku, who left the commission for a position with the Department of Finance. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Executive Director Weiss. Are there any comments or questions? Justin, are there any public comments on Executive Director Weiss's report?
No, Chair, no, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So that brings me to my report. And I think first and foremost, as we begin this meeting and a very important season as we're looking at the ATP request and the CAPTI presentations and all of the work that we've been doing with CalSTA and Caltrans to go and talk with our federal partners in Washington, D.C. and the elected officials, I think it is safe to say that 2021 is like the Transportation Policy Olympics. We have been doing so much soul searching as it relates to how we are going to have cleaner, better transportation and how we are going to move forward in transportation policy at the federal, state, and local level. It is very exciting that every single one of you commissioners has been doing work in this arena, both as commissioners and in the work that you do outside of your commission roles. And this is very, very exciting. I feel very proud that today is the first day that the Equity Advisory Roundtable has a role on our agenda. And Naila, I'm very much looking forward to your report. In addition, today, with a lump in my throat, I say that we will be doing something unusual, and that is that we will be having adjourning motions on the first day so that we can adjourn to honor Professor Marty Wax of UCLA and of the RAND Corporation, who is just a legend in transportation policy in California. We will be doing that sometime after 4:45 today so that his family can be present as we honor him. I am very excited and want to thank the work that has happened since our last meeting, not only with what we've been doing with CARB and HCD as part of our joint meetings, but frankly, to thank CalSTA and Caltrans for working with the CTC as we are examining the CAPDI report and process and ways of addressing the goals of CAPDI. You've made yourself available for a number of meetings, both within the CTC workshops and also out in the private sector and the public. And I thank you for making sure that more and more people have a chance to interact with you as we prepare testimony before the comment period ends next week. It is so important that we are able to talk about the future of transportation and development and energy policy, as this has such a profound impact on our state. In addition, I want to thank Commissioner Martinez and the Caltrans and the staff of the governor for the work that has continued on the discussions about Caltrans and homelessness and the safety around property along the freeways and underpasses. The work that is being done and the allocation made by Governor Newsom just yesterday is so commendable. And I am very much looking forward to seeing that articulate throughout our year and beyond. And finally, I want to thank our Vice Chair, Bob Alvarado, for his insightful motion about the ATP funds and additionally the 500 million for bike corridors. Since that motion was made in March, there has been such a rich discussion about projects and opportunities for biking and walking in the state of California. And I want to thank you all for the opportunity to look beyond what is available in SB1 and look to other funding sources and figure out how we can have projects that are fully funded and really outline all of the ways in which we would like to travel differently post COVID-19. With that, I look forward to our discussions today and our insightful public testimony. I will try to keep with the CAPDI and ATP items, the testimony to 3 minutes because there's so much to say within reason. And so I look forward to us all providing our comments and making sure that we're not repetitive, but to really be insightful about these profound opportunities to change the way we move and live in California. And with that, I'd like to open the opportunities to my colleagues, especially today, Commissioner Fran Inman.
Thank you, Chair Norton. I just want to mention that I took the opportunity last week to listen and learn to the California Food and Ag Board meeting, where the focus of the discussion was around the port congestion. So I know they record all of their hearings, and I would encourage everybody. Jean Soroka did a great job of kind of framing the challenges we're having. And I used to talk about the hiccups at the port. I think it's a little acid reflux, actually. I think it's more than a hiccup, unfortunately. So I think, you know, one thing we might consider is reaching out to Secretary Karen Ross and having her come join us, either sidebar or one of our hearings. Talk about the challenges that a lot of our ag partners have, because they have the typical issues of, you know, trying to move goods, but they also have expiration dates as goods need to be rapidly transmitted. And so I would just encourage everybody and see what we could do to lean in and help. There's clearly seasonality issues that they're dealing with. And, you know, we're all better together. We've asked our staff to see how the commission can help. And, you know, the first thing we're really doing is trying to listen and learn and then figure out how to really lean in. So great to have Senator Newman with us too, and would really encourage you to join in those discussions so we can really hear. And then just from my day jobs perspective, just want to raise the issue that we're seeing with increased prices and delays in getting supplies. I think I mentioned previously that our subcontractors just can't hold their bids anymore for more than 3 weeks. So I think for all of us in the transportation sector to be aware of what's going on and how that will impact us, and perhaps, you know, change some timing of what we need to do. But just heads up, because I do worry that we're going to see a bunch of cost increases due to delays and lack of the availability. So that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Inman, for those insightful comments. I see that none of my other colleagues wish to speak and that there is no public comment. Before I end, I just want to again thank the CTC staff for your incredibly hard work. And we have, in this next 2 days, 148 items to go through. And whether we are taking time to discuss them thoroughly on the mic, or whether we are doing it quickly as we go through the full items in batches, know that every single item on this agenda has been thoroughly vetted, and that the ability for this to move forward is because of countless hours of CTC staff work to make sure that these are ready for funding and discussion. And I just thank you all for your tireless efforts, because we couldn't be doing all of this work without you all. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce CalSTA Secretary David Kim.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Norton, and good morning, commissioners, commission staff, and members of the public. Let me start by mentioning a big event we did yesterday with Governor Newsom, and Chair Norton, I think you made reference to this. As I think most of you know, the governor presents his revised budget every year right around the middle of May, better known as May Revise. And so portions of the May Revise are being rolled out this week, and the entire plan will be unveiled this Friday, May 14th. So Director Tokso-Mashaka and I joined the governor in LA yesterday afternoon to kick off a new initiative called Clean California. And I will describe this as an intensive and all-out effort to clean and beautify freeways as well as local streets and roads. I think all of us have seen more and more trash piling up on our streets and freeways. And I will say, this goes well beyond homeless encampments. There are many reasons behind the growth in trash. And so this is all about dramatically expanding trash abatement efforts and taking it to the next level. And the other area of emphasis is beautification. We want to completely transform the look and feel of neighborhoods throughout the state with art installations, murals, and other beautification efforts. This is a $1.5 billion initiative over the next 3 years. And what's really unique about it is that it's going to be done in partnership with local government as well as other entities, state and non-state. It's also going to be a major job creator, 15,500 jobs over the next 3 years, and public awareness. Educating the public about the harms of littering will also be a big part of the program. I think many of you are aware of the fact that when you see large pickup trucks driving filled with furniture, mattresses, kitchen equipment, oftentimes they are not properly secured. A lot of people simply do not know how to properly secure their loads. This is going to be a part of that, public education and public awareness. And so this is a really exciting initiative, and Tokes will have much more to say in his report. One final point, it was terrific to be with the governor, not just to announce the program, but to pick up a massive amount of trash. We were just off the 110 freeway near USC and spent, I think, a good hour and a half filling up trash bags and removing large items like furniture and mattresses. And there was even a discarded electric scooter in the pile, Uber branded scooter. I will say the governor was on a mission to completely clean up the area and leave it spotless, which we did. And I will say without any hesitation that he outworked all of us. Let me now turn to CAPDI. We've been receiving public comment on the draft CAPDI plan over the past couple of months. And as you heard in Mitch's report, the CTC held 2 workshops in April that were very well attended and gave interested parties another opportunity to engage in the process. You're going to hear a summary of public comments later today. And we look forward to receiving more feedback between now and the May 19th deadline for comments. Also very happy to say we've had extensive conversations with our business and labor partners, as well as the construction industry. And I want to add that their input is invaluable and greatly appreciated as we collectively determine how best to grow the economy while at the same time combating climate change. And so I just want to say thank you to the Commission for assisting with stakeholder engagement, and thank you to all of our stakeholders who have taken the time to weigh in over the past year and a half. Now, once the comment period closes, CalSTO will review comments and determine how to incorporate the wide range of feedback as we take steps to finalize the plan. We're going to give you another update at the next CTC meeting in June, and then the plan will be finalized and available publicly by July 15th, at which point we will pivot to implementation. Let me briefly address the motion by Commissioner Inman and Commissioner Liu from the March meeting related to port congestion. I will say that this is something that has also been on my mind, and I've been following it very closely. We have held regular meetings over the past year with the California Association of Port Authorities to hear from them on operational challenges they've been facing since the start of the pandemic, and have also met with individual ports on a regular basis over the past year. And I think we all understand the complexity of the situation. There are so many factors and pressure points, and many of them are global in nature, including macroeconomic trends. And Commissioner Inman mentioned the many challenges facing the ag industry. And I've been in regular contact with my colleague, Karen Ross, Secretary of Food and Agriculture. So I just want to mention a couple things. We've been in contact with the Federal Maritime Commission and MARAD. MARAD stands for Maritime Administration, and we've been discussing these issues with them. And as of now, it is unclear how quickly these port congestion issues are abating. The chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission, Dan Maffei, predicted port congestion will last through the summer and possibly later into the year. So I think it's most appropriate for all of us to explore these issues. In the near term, I think we should look into potential actions the state might be able to take to support more efficient port operations. We should also engage our federal partners to help us address these issues that are impacting the entire national supply chain. And in the long term, we may want to consider developing a more comprehensive state maritime policy that clearly defines the state's role in addressing supply chain surges and disruptions at the ports. As I mentioned earlier, there are lots of complex issues and pressure points, some of which are within our control, many of which are not. But nevertheless, I look forward to collaborating with the Commission and continuing this very important dialogue. Finally, Madam Chair, we are keeping a very close eye on developments in Washington as they relate to surface transportation reauthorization and a potential infrastructure package. I'm glad you mentioned this along with Mitch. Since we last got together, the Biden administration unveiled its $2 trillion American Jobs Plan, which included $621 billion for transportation and resilience programs. And the president met with House and Senate leadership just this morning. And by all accounts, I've seen some media reports, it was a productive meeting. Meanwhile, Congress continues to move forward on surface transportation reauthorization. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee will be marking up its reauthorization bill during the week of May 24th. And on the other side of the Capitol, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee is also hoping to mark up its portion of the Senate reauthorization bill during the week of May 24th. The EPW Committee has jurisdiction over the highway title of the bill, and the Senate Commerce Committee plans to mark up the rail and safety titles sometime in early June. So things are really starting to move, and there will likely be new developments in the weeks and months ahead. And I also just wanted to mention that Director Omashawkin testified yesterday before the Senate EPW Committee, which held a hearing entitled Equity in Transportation Infrastructure, Connecting Communities, Removing Barriers, and Repairing Networks Across America. And I'd like to thank Caltrans for reconstituting the California Transportation Federal Affairs Working Group. This is a venue for coordinating statewide strategy for federal advocacy, as well as implementation of surface transportation reauthorization when the bill is enacted. And it's clearly going to play an important role in the months ahead. And so with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks. Thanks for the time, and I look forward to today's meeting.
My pleasure. I want to make sure that we ask a follow-up, especially in the transition between your report, Secretary Kim, and the upcoming report with Caltrans Director Omashawkin. And that is, thank you for also reminding us that the issues about debris and other challenges along the freeway corridors are often due to illegal dumping. And so we have a number of communities that have really been concerned about illegal dumping, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're wondering, how is it that there can be a communication so that we can report that? We received a lot of questions from agencies and others about how to make sure that we can address this. And I understand that there's also an effort to create MOUs with local agencies and nonprofits to help do some like very quick, rapid response, and that may be also part of Governor Newsom and your plan with Caltrans. Could you both elaborate on that in your presentations?
Sure. Thanks, Chair Norton. You know, when you mentioned illegal dumping, it reminds me there are programs in other departments that allow the members of the public to report. For example, and this goes back many years, you could call, many years ago, you could call an 800 number to report a vehicle that is belching massive amounts of emissions. That may be less common today, but you could actually call and report a vehicle and report the license plate. And then I think more recently, I believe DMV has a program where somebody might be able to report an out-of-state vehicle with out-of-state tags, and a situation where the vehicle has had out-of-state tags for much more than the allowed period of time. When you move a car from out-of-state to California, it has to be re-registered in California within a certain period of time. We've probably all seen situations where a car has an out-of-state plate for more than a few weeks, more like months, maybe even years. And so there are opportunities for people to report that. Along the lines of what you said, perhaps there are ways we can think about and develop a program to allow members of the public to, as you said, report dumping. And I think Tokes may be able to elaborate this on in more detail, but the program that we announced yesterday does include what's called free dump days, where Caltrans will set up a couple days a month for people, for anybody to dispose of their products and their belongings, no questions asked. And so that's part of it. So thank you for the question, Chair Norton, and Director Omashaka. I don't know if you want to add to that, but yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, I know Director Omashakin will add to that in his presentation. I wanted to open up any questions from my colleagues today. Okay, and are there any public comment requests?
There's no public comment at this time.
Thank you, Secretary Kim. We look forward to your participation as we talk about the CAPTI process today in our meeting. Appreciate it. Director Omashakin, this is a great prelude to the presentation that you are giving. So thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to hearing more about this great program that the governor just announced.
Thank you, Chair Norton. A very good morning to you, to commissioners, to leadership at the CTC and staff, members of the public, partners and stakeholders. Thank you for another opportunity for Caltrans to share a little bit of what has happened, what has occurred from our department in the last 2 months since we had a chance to get together. Let me just say quickly before I touch on the information, the formal information that I wanted to share about some of the things that have occurred. Just want to note that the comments from Chair Norton and Director Weiss about the things that are happening in our space, I can't think of a more exciting time to be doing the work that we're doing.
Yes.
I am more bullish on the future of transportation than I've ever been before, especially on the heels of what we all just went through with the pandemic and how it hit the aviation industry, the transit industry, the freight industry. Think of all those impacts, but where we're now headed, the resources that are coming our way from a funding standpoint, the policy decisions that are happening. We're going through this great pivot in our industry to not only focus on the infrastructure, but the ultimate good that we want to serve for people. So very exciting time for all of us, and very thankful to be working with many of you to accomplish those goals. Next slide. So as usual, I'm fortunate and glad to start off the presentation with the recognition of one of our staff, one of our employee highlights, Zeke Delamas. I've had a chance to meet Zeke on a couple of occasions. He's down in District 5. He's our emergency manager and senior transportation engineer for the district in District 5. This is one impressive guy. If you're ever in District 5 and you want to meet him. He started out working in Caltrans 31 years ago as an engineering student assistant, and he's worked his way all the way up to the very impactful role that he serves in now. I got a chance to meet him because I was down in the Big Sur region after the Highway 1 slip, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But he's been very instrumental in us being able to get this project and road back open. He has an unflattering work ethic and has made notable contributions and non-stop working behind the scenes, even on weekends and holidays, to help us with the project. He has outstanding communication skills. I picked this up in some of the conversations that I had with him. His supervisor, Sarah Von Swine, likes to say, Zeke is all about harmony and wanting everybody to work well together to get projects done. That's what he's mainly about. But he was very instrumental in helping us get the project done on Highway 1. So thanks to him and for his great contributions, and to Tim Gubbins, the entire team there in D1. Really appreciate it. And congratulations to Zeke Delamas for, again, his great work for the department. Next slide. So just a couple of major personnel announcements, some things that have occurred in the department as it relates to new people coming in. Eric Sundquist is our new sustainability advisor for the director's office. He is working directly with Ellen Greenberg and my office as well to lead us on issues related to SB 743 and the management of issues related to it. He's also going to be working on the strategic plan for the department and specifically the lead climate action comment or policy direction that we have in the strategic plan. I've known Eric for a long time, actually, known him for at least 10 years. Formerly, Eric was the managing director of SSTI, the State Smarts Transportation Initiative in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin in Madison. So he's worked with DOT CEOs from across the country. That's how I got a chance to meet him. Very active in the transportation space. He's on several TRB committees. He's chairing the social, economic, and cultural issues section at TRB. He has 4 different degrees. Not going to name all of them, but very impressively, he has a PhD in community and regional planning from Georgia Tech. So excited to have Eric join our team. Next slide. Also excited to announce our new chief of staff, Velocita Kelly. Velocita has been with Caltrans for 8 years, but has more than 31 years of service in government in California. For 17 years, she worked at the EDD, the Employment Development Department, and she spent 6.5 years at CalPERS as well. Prior to this appointment as chief of staff, she worked for those 7.5, 8 years. She worked in the ODA office, outdoor advertising office for Caltrans. She was a chief of that office. And in 2017, for several months, she acted as chief of staff for Malcolm Doherty and Komi Ajise. She was in the office acting chief of staff then, and she has an MBA from Cal State University. So congratulations to Velocita as she steps into this important assignment for the department. And before I move on from personnel updates, I'll be remiss if I didn't mention 2 people very quickly before I keep moving here. Number one, Jim Davis, who many of you have got a chance to know and work with for many years. Jim Davis stepped down from his from the chief deputy director role for the department. He's in an assignment now doing part-time work for us as a executive leadership coach. And he'll be retiring from Caltrans formally later this year. So I want to thank Jim for his 30+ years of service to Caltrans and helping to lead the department through such a challenging time. So thank you, Jim Davis. And next, Mike Keever. Mike Keever is now the acting chief deputy director for Caltrans. Mike has been with Caltrans also for 30+ years. He prior served in the most recent appointment, served as chief engineer and deputy director for project delivery. Excited to have Mike step into this role to assist the department as the COO for Caltrans. So congratulations to Mike Keever as well, our acting chief deputy director. Next slide. So there are 3 items that I'm always going to try to touch on at every single commission meeting: safety, equity, and climate action. Just a brief update on things that we're doing there, because those are sort of foundational priority goals for us, or priority items for us. And it's important to note that on April 29th, we honored Caltrans workers. We had the Caltrans Workers Memorial here at the Capitol. I was joined by the Caltrans Honor Guard, Tammy McGowan, our chief PIO, and several members of our maintenance team to honor the fortunately, I'll say that correctly, the 189 members of our Caltrans team who have fallen in the line of duty, doing work for Caltrans. We've been keeping track of this for 100 years, since 1921, and we've lost 109 members of the team. We honored them and their family members for the sacrifice on April 29th. And we were able to share again more information throughout the week about how to be safe in work zones across our state. Fortunately, we have not lost anybody in the line of duty in the last 2.5 years doing work for Caltrans. We're very thankful for that. We hope it stays permanently that way. Unfortunately, we did lose 5 members of the contracting team just last year alone. 5 members of our contracting team. And our contractors, we see them as an extended arm of Caltrans. They're like our own staff. But we lost 5 contractors who did not make it home to their families while they were doing contracting work for us. So nevertheless, this issue will continue to be highlighted so we can see reductions in serious injuries and fatalities on our transportation system. Next slide. Next, on climate action, just 2 quick things to highlight on climate action. Number 1, we're partnering with OPR, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, to establish a implementation working group, sort of a stakeholder working group that will consist of members from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. They will be helping us to figure out, again, how to continue to implement SB 743. Excited that we are having this opportunity to convene this working group, because I think it will make a big difference as we continue to move forward on SB 7 implementation of SB 743. So looking forward to that group continuing to move forward. And next, we announced as well in March the ZEV Action Plan 2.0. In conjunction or coordination with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. This action plan, the Action Plan 2.0, reaffirms the department's commitment to sustainable and equitable deployment of ZEV technology and infrastructure. So we're excited about this action plan that we just wrote out. It's going to mean a lot for all the climate goals that we have. This is, as everyone knows, has to continue to be a very comprehensive effort if we're going to meet the GHG reductions and climate related goals we have for the state. Next slide. Want to want to commend the CTC on the equity work that continues to happen. Chair Norton mentioned this already, and I think Director Weiss mentioned this as well. Thank you for inviting Caltrans and April to be a part of the Equity Advisory Roundtable kickoff. Sharing, we're excited to be a part of this roundtable and to be sharing the table with the CTC, Caltrans, CTC and CalSTA as this work continues to move forward. There's a total of 6 planned listening sessions for this year alone around this issue. And after each one of those sessions, there will be a follow-up with recommendations of actions to the executive board at Caltrans and of course the CTC. We're in the process of hiring a consultant still to help us with this work, but I'm so glad to see that we're putting action to a lot of the words and commitments that we've been making. And the very big step that we have to take, one of the most important steps, obviously, is to start by listening to the public we serve. And I'm glad that CTC is helping us move this important, very important item along. Next slide. And along those lines of addressing our commitment to equity and speaking of putting action, words into action, we held the first ever DBE summit at Caltrans at the end of March. Very excited here again. We had more than 1,000 registrants for this summit across the state. Our partners at Federal Highways were a big part of this. A huge shout out to a lot of the prime contractors like Granite Construction and Flatiron, who were a part of this summit. More than 536 attendees, and many public works contractors across the state, suppliers and consultants were part of this event, where we had topics like how to find contracting opportunities, the power of capital, and meet the primes. After the event, 43 contractors followed up with Caltrans for one-on-one meetings with our small business liaisons and opportunities to connect with the primes. Again, equity is not just about seeing how we can deliver projects better in our communities. That's a very important part of it, but the business opportunity that we provide is undoubtable as well. This program is a nearly $400 million program at Caltrans, the DBE program. So this step to have the summit, I think, will continue to yield many positive results for the program. And finally, on our commitment to equity, we're still wrapping up the final stages or midway through, I would say, the disparity study for the department. The disparity study is what helps us understand the conditions in the local marketplace and to establish for Caltrans what we should be focused on in the federal DBE program. This disparity study will provide useful information for setting overall annual aspirational and participation goals for women and minority-owned businesses. I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of our most recent, our current effort on the disparity study later this year. It's had a lot of engagement with partners and citizens across the state. Next slide. Just this very month, or actually last month, we celebrated the 4-year anniversary of SB1. Many of you in this meeting were a big part of helping SB1 to pass. That's given the state more than $5 billion annually, roughly $2.5 billion coming to the state side every year. And I just want to tell you that we say it all the time about promises made, promises kept, but I can tell you that we're doing exactly that with this effort. A lot of information here that don't have the time. I don't want to spend the time to necessarily go through, but I can tell you that from the four targets the four main targets that we have, from culverts to transportation systems management to bridges and pavement, we are absolutely on track to meet the goals there. We're keeping the promise to the citizens of the state to deliver on the SB1 goals that we have. So thank you for your support at the CTC to help us continue to get there. Next slide. Earth Day, just quickly on this, Earth Day litter pickup. We had a huge event last month, and we're glad to partner with the CHP rather to help get a very successful event done off of State Route 99 here in Sacramento. The image on the left is Commissioner Amanda Ray at the CHP and I picking up litter across on the side of the interstate, on the side of the highway, and some of our maintenance team and the CHP team on the right, and our PIO office also a part of the litter pickup that they, again, the point of doing events like this is not just for photo ops like this, but to raise awareness about the fact that we need to embrace our public spaces more and take more pride in spaces across the state. So we thank the CHP for their partnership and continue to raise awareness about litter and the impact that it has on our state. Next slide. So Chair Norton touched on this, and Secretary Kim touched on this as very well as well. Yesterday was a monumental day for our state, I believe. The governor announced what I believe is the most comprehensive effort that we've ever undertaken to clean the public spaces of our state, as he rolled out an initiative called Clean California, a $1.5 billion investment over 3 years to clean public spaces throughout the state. The governor deserves a lot of credit, not only for what Secretary Kim mentioned about how hard he worked yesterday. We spent more than an hour and a half picking up more than 40 bags of trash, which I would argue probably half of those bags he picked up himself. But so not only the effort, physical effort yesterday, but the vision and the guidance from him to get us to the place where we can roll out a plan like this. I mentioned the comprehensive nature. Not only is this going to involve the efforts to physically eliminate litter and pick up litter, but his vision was for getting jobs, arts in our public spaces, for getting local government involved, engaging local government. And I can't be more excited about this effort to get our state in a better condition. I have to give a lot of kudos to many members of our staff at Caltrans, everybody from our acting chief of staff, Adriana Surface, Corey Benz, our deputy director for maintenance, Sergio, our maintenance chief, Lindsay, our maintenance office chief of staff. Many members of our team worked tirelessly over a 6-week period until last week, where the efforts around this were finalized. I just want to commend them and thank them for this new program. Next slide. Just a quick picture from yesterday. After all the sweating, the governor picked up a 9-inch blade knife amongst all the many things that were found at the location when we were cleaning up. But Secretary Kim and Tony Tavares were again there as well. Our district director working hard to get this particular location cleaned up. Next slide. And I think this may be the final information to share this morning. I also want to commend the District 5 team. I mentioned this earlier for the cleanup, not the cleanup, but the repair to the Highway 1 slide in the Big Sur region. I got a chance to go out there a few weeks after the slide happened. And when I approached this particular scene and actually walked down this gash that you see here that looks like an abyss, when I was there, I said, there's no way that the timeline that they were providing of being able to complete this work by summertime, by Memorial Day at the end of May or June, I said, there's no way this can happen. This team got it done in 86 days, 8 weeks early, and on budget, less than $12 million to fix what you're looking at. An impressive feat by this team in District 5, and I just want to commend them again for all the work that they did. This got a lot of national, international attention when it happened, and they were able to step up. Papet Construction, Chavez Construction were a big part of it, but the team out there, Tim, both Tim, Sarah, Kevin, many people, Zeke, they were very instrumental in helping us. So thank you to them. Next slide. I'm not going to go through detail on all of this, but here's what it looked like on the 20th of January with the gash and opening.
Dr. Omshakin, I don't mean to interrupt you, but suddenly your microphone has really cut out and we can barely hear you. And we'd really like to hear your presentation.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I was a little too far away from the microphone. So just an image here of a gash in the earth from that day on the morning of the 28th when the earth sort of opened up here. And next slide. And the visit that I mentioned in March to the location and all the work that was occurring on site. Here I'm walking with Tim, our construction deputy in the District 5. Again, you can see all the bulldozers at work here. Just an amazing day of that particular day of work to get things repaired. And again, 86 days that this work was completed. Next slide. And here's what it looks like at the end of April. There's a little bit of more work to done. You can see K-Rail on the side of the road there next to the Pacific Ocean. We're working to do some more culvert work and earth work in the area and remove this K-Rail and put permanent railing up in the coming weeks. So from that hole in the earth to getting this done in 86 days, again, just impressive work by the team. Next slide. The press conference that day, fortunate again to have Governor Newsom, Tim Gubbins, our district director, federal and state and local leadership there on that day in April to announce or to do a ribbon cut on the reopening of the Highway 1 in Big Sur. Next slide. That is it. I know that's a lot of information. It doesn't even touch the tip of the iceberg on some of the things that have happened in the last 8 weeks. Those were just very brief highlights, but thank you again to CTC for allowing Caltrans to share a little bit about what's occurred in the department. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director Omashaka. And we do have some commissioners that wish to speak, and I have some questions for you afterwards. I'd first like to call on Commissioner Joe Liu and then Commissioner Michelle Martinez.
Okay. Thank you for that thorough update, Director Omashaka. Lots of information there. You didn't, however, touch on the one thing that I wanted to ask you about, and that was a recent letter from US EPA sent to Caltrans and Los Angeles Metro requiring a Clean Air Act particulate matter hotspot analysis of project level transportation conformity. It's a lot of jargon, I know, for the 710 freeway project. EPA concluded that even a fully implemented I-710 clean truck program would not avoid this requirement of preparing this hotspot analysis just because of dust, tire wear, and brake wear. And EPA pointed to the environmental justice problems with this project and attributed its transportation conformity analysis requirement in part to the refusal of Caltrans and Metro to include an I-710 clean truck program in a formal written commitment, which would include an enforceable obligation under the Clean Air Act's state implementation plan. So I don't know if you've been dealing with this issue or if you're leaving it up to your Caltrans District 7 Director, Tony Tavares, but if you are, I'd like to hear, what your plans are to address this EPA requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Liu, for the question. And like you said, I did mention this. This is probably one of hundreds of things that we have to deal with on a daily basis and manage on a daily basis at the department. But I'm familiar with the project, familiar with the issue, familiar with the letter from the EPA. Secretary Kim and I and Undersecretary Alyssa Canove and several members of our team, including Tony Tavares, actually had a recent meeting about this issue. Like you mentioned, this is not just a air quality issue that we're facing on this project. The EJ issues with potential relocations to me are just as potentially problematic. We're at a place now where we want to put an absolute pause on this project in the format that it's currently in. It is not aligning with the direction currently in the form that it's in. With the direction that we are taking the state from a transportation standpoint. Just plain and simple. We haven't responded. I don't think we've responded to that EPA letter yet. But with the air quality issues that this project potentially raises, even with the clean truck program and the relocation issues that this will, potentially bring, don't see how this project can in any way move forward in its format. So we will probably reach out to you, Commissioner Liu, to just give you an offline sort of update on the path forward. But what you see in front of you today in the current format, we will not be moving forward, at least from Caltrans. And I'm sure Metro, they may have to take another vote on this particular project, but from our end on the state side, I don't see how we can move forward with this project in its current format.
Thank you for that answer, and I look forward to the briefing. I saw that you were with Supervisor Solis yesterday. She has a big interest in this too, and I'm sure that a major role in Metro's decisions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Martinez?
Thank you, Chairwoman Norton, and good morning, Director Omashawkin. I have two questions. One was similar to Commissioner Liu, and so I'm glad he brought that up. In regards to SB 1000, and I'm really happy to hear that from Caltrans perspective, you guys are not possibly moving forward and supporting this project, but it has to go through Metro, and you just mentioned they may have to take another vote. The one thing that I would highlight is ensuring that there are a lot of off the 710, all the major Southeast cities in that area have been talking about this issue, and in particular, even in the city of Long Beach. And so I think as we move forward, and with SB 1000 that was approved in 2016 by Governor Brown, and ensuring that we have environmental justice into our planning, and I definitely understand that the 710, that specific project has been in the making for a very long time, but now with the current decisions and some of the issues that are being brought to the forefront, a lot of these other communities have interests, specifically elected officials. And so my hope is that we continue not just to engage city staff, public works, but we continue to figure out ways of how to listen to community, how to hear, because when we talk about equity, we have to understand that we need to make investments in ensuring that we educate the public about the roles of not just local government, but of state government. And sometimes, that gets very convoluted because the rubber meets the road at the local level. We talk about Board of Supervisors, we just mentioned Chairwoman Solis. Well, guess what? Most folks have no idea what Board of Supervisors do. The rubber meets the road with mayors and council members on the ground, not with state legislators or anyone else. And so I want to make sure that as you move forward with your team to continue not only to listen to those stakeholders, but to the elected officials, because they too have to make some decisions and they too have to comply with the mandates of SB 1000 as that law took place in 2016. And surely it's fairly new, and as many of these cities are updating their general plans, and that's when it takes effect, is when you update your general plan. And a lot of those communities right now are updating their general plans to being compliant. They're going to have to be compliant with SB 1000. So I'm glad to hear your position. I just hope that we can go out there and continue to communicate with all stakeholders, including elected officials. Secondly, I want to thank you and your staff. Chairwoman Norton mentioned last week that we had a meeting and with Tony Tavares and his team and some other stakeholders. Want to thank you for giving us the opportunity, and specifically Director Wise, to really have that kind of to have that conversation about our freeways and job opportunities and partnerships as it pertains to MOUs. I think it's imperative as we move forward. I was excited to see the governor and yourself out there. I was just out there on Friday in that specific location where you all were cleaning with Judge Carter, and he actually gave $15 to the Caltrans staff, and I'm not sure if that was illegal. He's like, go buy coffee. I appreciate the work that you're doing out there. But we were out there last Friday at 7 a.m. looking at all the freeways and the underpasses, and specifically in Councilmember Curran Price, because he submitted to the court the issues that he was having with Caltrans and specifically the cleanups. And so Judge Carter wanted to go out there specifically in Curran's district last week, and that's where we were at on Friday. You guys were there as well yesterday, so you probably you've seen. But I want to testify here today that the Caltrans staff were remarkable. That were out there last week, and obviously yesterday, and yourself with Governor Newsom, the work that they have been doing, right, even during the pandemic. And so I just wanted to thank you, to thank your staff that are out there, boots on the ground, really delivering. Because when we were there, I'll be honest with you, they're kind of like, who are you? Why are you out here? Why are you taking pictures? And once we identified ourselves, they're like, oh my God, okay. They wanted to take pictures with the judge. And we're like, no, get back to work. We don't want to bother the work that you all are doing, but just wanted, I'll end with this, is as we move forward and the partnership, and I heard the governor's comments as he talked about local government and the accountability aspect. And we've had this conversation about ensuring that we communicate with the local elected officials and not just staff, because I think that's one of the biggest barriers, is that whose jurisdiction is what and who can clean up what. And a lot of times, a lot of these local elected officials have a difficult time in communicating and having to understand that various governments have local, like for example, the city of Los Angeles council members have a lot of flexibility in comparisons to other municipalities and their roles and their powers and who they can communicate. Typically in a much smaller city, you have one member probably from a public works department that deals with Caltrans. And so for the most part, a lot of these local leaders have no idea who to communicate with. And I mentioned that to Tony as well last week, because as you are trying to gain more strength and partnerships with local municipalities to ensure that we're able to beautify a lot of the roads, it's going to be imperative to have true partnerships with the cities, but also the elected officials, because at the end of the day, the rubber meets the road with them. So when we talk about accountability, we just can't throw staff under the bus. The elected officials have to take that responsibility. And Governor Newsom stated that yesterday in his comments. But the only way that's going to happen is by having that open dialogue and communication. So again, thank you so very much for your guys' efforts as you continue during this pandemic. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Let me just say just briefly on two notes, and I'll be brief on both of the comments you made. Number one, on the project, what we need to do and what we are doing is moving from a place of compliance to commitment on issues like equity, from compliance to commitment. And it's not easy, it's challenging to do the work that we're doing, but part of that commitment, like you stated very well, is engaging elected officials and stakeholders like we haven't before. It's just plain and simple. Moving beyond what just CEQA and NEPA says we should do, and true commitment means that we're fully engaging. So we're trying to do that. We're committed to doing that. And on the litter issue, I just want to thank you and the Judge Carter, for the work you're doing, the constant outreach that you're doing on this challenge, especially in the LA region, and working with our team. So we'll continue to do our part. We have an infusion of resources coming our way. And hopefully, as we undertake this new effort, it's something that is sustainable, that's sustained, that's not short-lived. But beyond this 3 years, we transform the way our public spaces look. So thank you for your support along the way in making that happen. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Director Omashakin. I want to recognize that Commissioner Tavaloni and ex officio Commission member Laura Friedman, who is the Assembly Chair for Transportation, has also joined us, and wanted to give them an opportunity to speak if they are interested. In the meantime, I wanted to ask you about two things. One, both Commissioner Liu and Commissioner Martinez asked some of the questions I had, but I wanted to make sure that in the proposal that the governor just made, that it still needs to go through the legislature. And I wanted to ask how we can, in all of our walks of life and everyone within earshot, support this proposal as it goes through the legislature. How can you keep us informed so that we can make sure that we are advocating for this very forward-thinking and transformational approach to wayfinding and cleaning California?
Yeah, very important question, Chair Norton. So as this process ensues, as we go through this process, your continued engagement with members of the legislature to express how important this is, I think is important. We know how influential and important the CTC is. All of you as commissioners, you absolutely play a role in continuing to push for issues like this. I can tell you that many members of the legislature in leadership roles have contacted me directly in the past and asked for what Caltrans can do more to address litter challenges, litter abatement across the state. So this is not going to be new news to many members. They're familiar and aware. But any conversations that you can have, I think, with members of the legislature, especially in key leadership roles, to just express your support and understanding of how important this is. Because, by the way, this is more than just a beautification issue.
Right.
This is a sustainability and environmental issue. It's an issue that impacts safety of the traveling public, because debris could be flying on our roadways and hit vehicles or people. So this issue is bigger than just picking up trash and picking up litter. I mean, the impacts from a jobs and arts and local engagement standpoint are pretty broad. So thank you for mentioning that, Chair.
And Director Omashakin, I do want to commend your District 7 staff and their work and just how accessible they were in our meeting on this topic and working with the business community and nonprofit communities. This is an example of your leadership going all the way down and being really accessible and transparent. We just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. One thing that you presented in your presentation today that was very moving was the memorials for people who have lost their lives in service to Caltrans. And I was wondering if you could provide us their names so that we can adjourn in their memory tomorrow at our adjournment. Because, as you know, worker safety is of primary importance to both Caltrans and CTC. And many of our commissioners speak often about the need for additional worker safety measures and recognition. And we want to make sure that anyone who has given their lives in service for Caltrans work and on behalf of the state of California is recognized by the CTC. And I want to thank Commissioner Inman for also reminding us that we should be making these memorial opportunities an opportunity to honor people for the work they're doing and the work that they have done.
Yeah, this is the most important responsibility we all have, by far, is to make sure that the moving public is safe and that we keep the people who work for our teams absolutely safe as well. So that as they do the work they do for the state, they can return home to their families, uninjured and alive. So thank you, Chair Norton, for that recommendation. I will see that our staff can get that information to you, that 189 names for tomorrow.
Wow. Thank you so much. We have one public comment. Justin, could you read the public comment?
Thank you, Chair Norton. We have one attendee with their hand raised at the moment. We have Chris Wilson. Chris, you're self-muted. You're free to unmute yourself and make your comment. Okay, well, it appears Chris is not available. We will come back. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. With that, I see no other requests from our commissioners who wish to speak. So thank you so much, Director Omashakin. We look forward to receiving those names tomorrow. And thank you again for your expert work.
Chair Norton, I just want to, just one quick comment. I failed to mention new Commissioner Grisby. I was not at the last meeting. I saw him on the screen a little earlier. I just want to welcome him. I've had a chance to communicate with him before his appointment. Excited for his opportunity to step into this role. Congratulations, Commissioner, and look forward to working with you in this new assignment. So thank you, Chair Norton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. With that, we are going to move to the FHWA California Division Administrator, Vince Mamano. Vince, great to see you.
Hello. Good to see you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Excellent. First, I'll just to respond on the Workers' Memorial. I've had the opportunity to participate in that several years now, actually all 13 years I've been here in the state. And it's a beautiful ceremony. I've met with the families and talked with them, and they really appreciate the care and concern that Caltrans and the whole transportation community have for them and their family. So I just want to applaud Caltrans for that beautiful ceremony, and even doing it virtually. They've had to do it virtually the last couple of years, and it's always emotional. It's always very caring. So I thank you all for doing that every year. It's a great thing. I want to hit Jim Davis. I would love to just trash him and give him all kinds of hard time, but I just can't. He's just too good of a guy and a class act. So, Jim, it's been a great pleasure of mine and my team to work with you over the years. You're a great leader. You're just good people, and I think that's what shows every time you deal with people. You're easy to get along with, and you're a guy that tries to find a solution. But you're just class guy, Jim. So thank you for all the service you've given to all of us over all of your many years, and congratulations to Mike Keever on his acting position. Also want to commend Tim Gubbins and his team in District 5 for the work on the slide repair. There was a previous director of Caltrans that once mentioned at a national meeting that it's kind of hard holding up the edge of the continent. And District 5 has had their opportunity to hold up the edge of the continent. So congratulations. And again, that's another example of when push comes to shove and something's got to get done, it gets done. It gets done fast, and it gets done right. So congratulations to Tim Gubbins and his team in District 5 on that great effort there. Want to welcome Polly Trottenberg. So Polly Trottenberg has been confirmed as the DOT's new Deputy Secretary. Many of you may know her previously in the Secretary's office under the Obama administration. So we're glad to have her back. And just want to hit real quick our funding, Secretary Kim, and hit a little bit on the funding where we are still on the FAST Act. We've got the FAST Act extended until the end of September, our federal fiscal year. We've heard talk about the American Jobs Act and other infrastructure opportunities that are there that is separate from the FAST Act. So I want to make sure that's clear. And remember, the FAST Act was extended for a year, but it was extended under 2020 funding. So we didn't get any additional funding when it came from that. So just wanted to remind people that the FAST Act is still expiring at the end of September, which is our overarching transportation legislation. We do have an earmark that's coming, or not an earmark. We have a discretionary program, RAISE. It's Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. That discretionary program, the application's opportunity closes on July 12th. Just want to let everybody know about that. Heads up that Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration approved the FSTIP on April 16th, and that included air conformity determination. We developed a procedure with Caltrans and FTA. Hopefully that'll expedite the amendments to that in the future, so we should be able to move a lot quicker as we move forward. So I want to thank Caltrans for their efforts to try and streamline that process, and our partners at the Federal Transit Administration. There's a state freight planning toolkit regional workshop that'll be held on June 17th for the Western states. So that'll an opportunity for the Western states to work together and talk about the regional planning for freight. Many of you also know that earmarks, that Congress has provided several earmarks. So the process with that is they'll put them in there. They'll send them to Federal Highway and say, hey, this is what we think. So we're going to need to, get reached out to my office to see, what's happening with that particular requested earmark. So we may be reaching out to the sponsoring entity, maybe reaching out to local counties, city, state, anybody. And the role that I have in my office and my team is an eligibility decision. It's not I really think this is a really good project or a bad project, or I really want this, because remember, this is a federally assisted state administered program. It's not for Federal Highway to say, yes, you should do that project. No, it's your local decisions on those things. The main determination that we make on these earmarks and everything is this an actual eligible project for federal aid funds? So that's the big role that we have in that, and that's a little bit of a process that we go through there. I also see that on your agenda, you're hitting on HOV degradation and managed lanes. So yay, woohoo! I know that's been a challenge for us over the years. I really appreciate the development in this process that Caltrans has been working with to really have a plan that's going to make a difference in the degradation of the degradation of the HOV lanes and the managed lanes. So I see that there are some projects that are out there. We're glad to see that there are projects that are going to make a difference in these, that are put in the plan that are going to make a difference. So, and then we're moving forward with those projects. So that process seems to be working. So I look forward to seeing the results of that. And Chair Norton had requested about talking a little bit about some of the right-of-way guidance that has come out recently with Federal Highway Administration. So in the last month or so, we've put out two pieces of guidance in alternative use of highway right-of-way. The first piece of guidance talks about, or really allows the use of shelters or other facilities that provide services for people experiencing homelessness. So that's something you got to work with Caltrans on, obviously. We have right-of-way use agreements and public interest findings and a few things like that we need to go through that are process things. We're working with Caltrans to try and streamline that process. I know there's a lot of concern in that area and a lot of opportunity in that area. So I want to thank Caltrans for their patience with us and working with us to try and streamline those processes. The second piece of guidance that just recently came out supports the utilization of the right-of-way for things like renewable energy generation, electrical transmission and distribution projects, broadband projects, vegetation management, inductive charging and travel lanes, and alternative fueling facilities. So that's some opportunity to recognize that the highway right-of-way is an asset and to take advantage of that asset. I think there's been some confusion a little bit. 23 United States Code Section 111, hate to get that specific, but that talks about interstates. So I think there's been a little confusion that you might be able to put a charging station, say in a rest area, and charge a fee to people who want to plug into that charging station. So 23 USC section 111 does not permit the construction of automotive service stations or other commercial establishments for serving motor vehicles users inside the interstate right of way. So that's still a no-no on charging, I hate to say charging, on requiring a fee for charging in those. That still can be done if there was no fee involved inside the interstate, but not if we're going to require a fee. I'm trying to get rid of using the word charging. So outside of the interstate right of way, there's some opportunities there. But I think the big thing that this guidance really does is recognize that the highway right of way is an asset. And there's an opportunity for public-private partnerships. There's an opportunity to commercialize that asset in some areas. Things like I talked about broadband. I mean, I know that's a big challenge here in California. It's one of the focus areas. So you're really looking at equity opportunities. So we can really use the highway right away to do that. There's two different ways to deal with that. There's an alternative use, or if you designate it as a utility. So there's some nuances that go between those two types of things. And again, we're working with Caltrans to do everything we can to streamline it. So right now, our NEPA assignment, which has Caltrans making NEPA determinations on federal projects in California, that memorandum of understanding right now, MOA, one of the two, it's MOA, MOU, whatever it takes, right? That one right now does not allow Caltrans to take responsibility under NEPA assignment for non-highway projects. So we've worked immediately after we got this guidance to work with Caltrans to put together a programmatic categorical exclusion agreement, and that will delegate that decision process to Caltrans for the environmental document for those types of projects. So we're doing everything we can to streamline these processes. There might be one that we might have to weigh in on, but we're doing everything we can to do as much delegation as we can, as much streamlining as we can to try and facilitate the uses of these assets. And I think I am done. I have two things I forgot to mention: Asian American and Pacific Islander Month. Bobby, I can't believe you're not out there in the picture wearing your Aloha shirt. So this is my contribution to that, having lived there for a couple of years in the Pacific. It's a beautiful place. I recommend it highly. I never said I was that bright because I came here from there. And then lastly, this has been a real focus in my agency, specifically internal to our staff. And it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think that's something I just want to encourage people to take the time to recognize where you're at. Take the time to recognize where your peers, your family, your staff are, and recognize that this is a very challenging time, and just take the time and make sure we're good. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I need some help. And that's the type of thing we're trying to embrace in our agency at the Federal Highway Administration. We're having Mental Health Mondays. We're having webinars and discussion. We had a discussion the other day where we had some of our senior leaders talk about some of the challenges that they went through. So I just want to encourage everybody to remember that these are challenging times, and we're in California, so it's always something going on. We're a busy state where the rest of the country, I always kind of look at them and go, really, come on, let's go. So there's a lot of stuff that we're doing here. So I just want to encourage everybody to recognize and take the time for your own and the people around you's mental health awareness. And I think that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Vince, for that very thoughtful presentation and the reminder of always being aware of mental health awareness, and certainly with the increase in road rage and other speeding and other issues. We had wanted to ask you, and we brought this up last time, about just what the federal government is seeing in terms of like increased high-speed crashes and some of the things that are going on that seem to be even more prevalent during COVID, and what is being done on a federal level about that. And then I also wanted to ask the status of the recommendations about decommissioning freeways and what's happening with what the results would be about decommissioning freeways, as Senator Padilla and others have been very active on that thought as an equity opportunity and with some other implications.
So I would love to say I know more about the last one. We've touched on that a little bit in our office. We've had some discussions with Caltrans on that. I haven't had the opportunity to get really deep into that one. There are some rules that go along with the federal, purchasing a right of way with federal dollars and what you have to do to dispose of that, if it's going to be a highway or not a highway, and those types of things. So it's a federally assisted, state administered program. So our biggest thing is let's see what we can do to help the state do what they're trying to do. So we're going to work with Caltrans to help Caltrans find the opportunities. I always tell people there's when my kid was 5 years old, he could tell me what the black and white was. I'm looking for the gray. So we're going to look for every opportunity where we have some flexibility to do that. And I blanked on the first comment there. I'm sorry, Chair Norton.
It was about high-speed crashes.
Oh, right. Yeah. So there had been some increases in that. So we're working with NHTSA, and I know the California Office of Traffic Safety is also working in this area, trying to get some campaign. I know Caltrans is actually doing that same thing. So we're looking for identifying some opportunities to get that education out there. To try and help people to recognize that, because you're right, the highways are less occupied, so people feel like that's their opportunity to get to the other place faster, and so we're doing everything we can. I think enforcement is one of the things that are going to help in that area, but you see those fatalities, and those fatalities numbers should have gone down with less people on the road, but they didn't. At least like they should have been, and so. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has a big focus on this. California Office of Traffic Safety, Caltrans' Office of Safety, my office the same way. So there's a lot of focus on that area. It's just trying to figure out how do we get to that, and how do we get that message out to get people to slow down. It's not a high-speed freeway. It's a freeway.
Well, and thank you for the update on the issues about the TCEP and our requests about the ability to have charging and other uses along freeways. That's something that CTC and CalSTA and Caltrans have been talking to the congressional delegation about. So we really appreciate the updates and the specificity on some of the new rulemaking in that regard.
All right. And it's really important to remember interstate and non-interstate, there is a difference. So there are some rules and laws that are applied to interstate only, and then some that don't. So we can work with your team to help clarify any of those types of things as we go forward.
Thank you so much. Justin, are there any public comments today?
No, Chair Norton, no public comment at this time.
Okay, commissioners, any of you wish to speak? With that, Vince, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, and we look forward to working with you throughout the next few months today.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks again. With that, we are going to move to item 10, the regional agency's moderator, Yvonne Garcia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Yvonne.
All right, great. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Yvonne Garcia with the Butte County Association of Governments. Thank you to our previous presenters. Excellent presentations. I'd like to echo the comments on Jim Davis. Sir, you are a class act and you will be missed. Madam Chair, we held our statewide RTPA group meeting yesterday. First off, I'd like to thank Commission, Caltrans, CalCog, and FHWA staff, and the rest of the presenters who regularly take the time to provide the RTPA group with a preview of the commission meeting presentations and provide another opportunity to provide input and ask questions concerning the transportation community. So thank you all. Special thanks to Julia Kingsley, CTC staff alumni, who is now a consultant for the Assembly Transportation Committee, which Assembly Member Friedman chairs. Ms. Kingsley and Ms. Kiana Valentine of Transportation California tag teamed a discussion on the potential budget surplus we may have and to discuss what the regional transportation priorities are, should funding actually materialize. While we heard from several regions, there is a general theme. Any and all funding is welcomed, obviously. Let's try to keep existing processes or programs, let's keep it simple, and let's try to get the best projects out as fast as possible. Some of us already sent letters urging for an infusion of funding for the ATP and fund the backlog of projects. Transportation California has already done great outreach and has prepared a letter with specific funding programs that could use a boost of funding. Take your pick. ATP, $2 billion. Sustainable Communities Block Grant Program, $1 billion. Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, $300 million. Solutions for Congested Corridor Program, $300 million. The STEP, $500 million. Highway Safety Improvement Program, $250 million. State and Local Transportation Adaptation Program, $500 million. Infill Infrastructure Grant Program, $500 million. Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure, $1.5 billion. The list of programs mentioned strongly indicates existing revenue sources is nowhere near what is needed. While the needs vary by region and questions were raised on how this or that would work, we can only hope the need to address these questions is something we have to deal with. We would all look forward to those discussions and workshops should funding materialize. Thanks again to Assembly Member Friedman's office and Transportation California for your sincere efforts and open communication. We are thankful FHWA has transitioned to an electronic approval process for the federal tip and amendments, which should streamline the process somewhat. Thanks to Antonio Johnson from FHWA for addressing the group. Regarding potential ATP augmentation, some of us wrote letters requesting the $2 billion be directed to the ATP. We heard from Commission staff that funding ATP projects that scored 60 and above would take about $1.5 billion, and $500 million could be used for pilot projects such as bike highways. Funding these projects would clear the slate and make new projects more competitive for the next cycle 6. As a cyclist and advocate myself, I think even if you scored a 60, that project really meant something to a local agency and should be considered. Regarding ATP Cycle 6, likely starting in the fall, we all look forward to the extensive and accessible outreach by Lori Waters and her stellar team. Regions have been informed they can reach out to Commission staff to request a central or branch workshop. Thank you, Lori. Madam Chair, at the last Commission meeting, we reported that Ms. Dee Lamb of Caltrans Local Assistance was working with the RTPAs to develop what we're calling a training day to offer and provide needed training to the RTPAs and their respective key public works staff, as well as Caltrans. It's been a challenging year to say the least with COVID. A survey was already conducted and specific needs have been identified. We'd like to thank local assistants for their effort in developing training that benefits all. So this is a work in progress and we're moving forward on that. Thanks to Matthew Yazga for getting the save the dates for the SB1 Competitive Program Guidelines Development Workshop to begin this August. Quite a number of workshops are slated, so thank you, Matthew. The last item was to get the discussion going on what Caltrans's criteria is for support letters for federal earmarks and grants. Some agencies were successful while others were not in getting a support letter if the project was on the state highway system. Not a big deal. The regions are just asking for clarity to know upfront for future earmark and possibly raise support letter requests. We do recognize in California that it's always a priority to attract and bring increased federal transportation investments for our transportation system. I did hear from Marlon Flournoy from Caltrans who indicated he'd be glad to address the group at our next meeting. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Garcia? Okay, and Justin, are there any public comments?
No, Chair, not at this time.
Great. Thank you so much for your report. And we will move to item 11, the Rural Counties Task Force Chair, Nafili Barrett.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Nafili Barrett, Secretary to the Rural Counties Task Force and Executive Director of the Mendocino Council of Governments. On behalf of the rural counties, I'd like to welcome the new and newly promoted CTC and Caltrans staff members that were introduced in the previous reports. We look forward to working with you all in the future. And congratulations to Jim Davis on his upcoming retirement. The May Rural Counties Task Force meeting will be held next week, at which we'll receive updates on state and federal funding programs and proposals, the ITSP and CAPTI, as well as discuss project financing and agency return to work protocols. Since the last meeting, the RCTF and its members continue to be engaged in statewide transportation activities. Following the CTC's adoption of the CRISA fund distribution at the last meeting, rural regions have been working to get those funds programmed at the local level. We are appreciative of the $200,000 funding floor that was included with those funds, as well as all of CTC staff efforts that went into their development and subsequent development of the draft guidelines, which include the option of state exchange for small rural regions. These provisions will allow rural regions to respond to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in a meaningful way. Even with the infusion of funds from the stimulus bill, we are still keenly aware that there is a great need for additional transportation funding in rural counties and throughout California. With this in mind, the Rural Counties Task Force signed on in support of Transportation California's proposal for 21-22 state budget investments in transportation funding. This proposal includes an infusion of funding for programs that are critical to rural counties, such as the Highway Bridge Program, the STIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program, State and Local Transportation Adaptation, ZEV infrastructure, and the augmentation of the ATP as proposed by Commissioner Alvarado. We believe that transportation infrastructure is an ideal use for a one-time funding opportunity, and the proposal would help further the goals of statewide planning efforts, including CAPTI, without hurting existing funding programs on which rural agencies rely. Regarding CAPTI, the RCTF and member agencies are very appreciative of CTC and CalSTA staff for their efforts to provide additional workshops on the draft CAPTI and to extend the comment period. Many rural regions provided comments during the workshops and through individual comment letters. The RCTF looks forward to continuing to work with CTC, CalSTA, and Caltrans to implement the goals of the CAPTI in a way that allows rural regions to be viable participants in these efforts, to continue to successfully compete in statewide funding programs, and to move forward with much needed projects that benefit not only rural Californians, but also the millions of visitors that come to our areas to enjoy our many recreational opportunities, as well as goods movement in and out of our regions. Finally, on behalf of the rural counties, I want to again thank CTC staff and acknowledge their efforts to be helpful and supportive to all of the RCTF member agencies. They continue to go above and beyond to be accessible and be sure that all regions of California have an opportunity to be involved in the statewide processes. And we're very thankful for their thoroughness and inclusiveness. And with that, I'll conclude my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Barrett. I see no hands raised from our commissioners, unless Mr. Grisby, your video's on. Okay. Is there any remarks from the public? Justin?
No, Chair, not at this time.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, item 12, the Self-Help Counties Coalition is moved to tomorrow morning. So we are now on item 13, Transit Operators Update, Rolando Cruz.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I believe I had a presentation. I hope they can pull it up. I just wanted to share a few nice pictures with you guys.
There we go.
Okay. So on behalf of Culver City, I want to thank you, Chair Norton and commissioners, for asking us to come and share our journey with you in becoming California's Transit Agency of the Year for 2020. My name is Rolando Cruz, and I am the Chief Transportation Officer of the Culver City Transportation Department. I was hired by our city manager in July of 2019 with a directive to make change. Recognizing that the industry is changing, I was challenged to come up with more comprehensive strategies to accommodate pedestrians, scooters, bicycles, motorcycles, automobiles, and buses. With the City Council support, our team began a journey in 2019 to reimagine a new way of looking at mobility to connect community and enhance quality of life. And that soon became our vision. Next slide. Within the first 2 months, I went out and met our entire team over several barbecues, and we asked them what could they do about the declining bus ridership and increasing traffic. We agreed that if we continued doing the same thing that we were doing, the decline would only continue. We needed a shift in paradigm, try different things. I invited them on a journey of doing something different. And we agreed that our day-to-day business mission to plan, operate, and maintain the movement of people to, through, and from Culver City must continue. Our goal was to strengthen what we have and then build something new around it. Next slide. That shift in paradigm was also required of our leadership team. So I introduced a new business model that required us to build a strategic plan to accomplish our vision and work towards that plan. We all sat around a room and just laid out what we wanted to do differently. Council asked us, and our managers wanted to expand mobility options, add bus-only lanes, use technology, and electrify our fleet by 2028. At the same time, we wanted to keep our fixed route healthy and financially sound. And then COVID-19 came, so we had to deal with that as well. With the plan set, we then started to look at our business with 3 different lenses and how they all connected. First, our day-to-day operations, which is what we do today. And then from our higher 50,000 level view, our strategic plan. The third lens is the work of management, bridging the gap. It is our job to prioritize and implement goals and objectives needed to accomplish the change in day-to-day mission match our vision. Of course, this cannot be done in a silo. It requires constant communication and input from our employees. Next slide. Together, we came up with our vision, mission, and most importantly, our employee core values: safety, communication, professionalism, teamwork, and kindness and respect. We developed our short-range transit plan. We rebranded our department to emphasize the delivery of service, and at the same time had to stop and jointly develop and implement new procedures to keep the employees and passengers safe as a result of COVID-19. Throughout the year, we kept an open dialogue and our hope alive with the kick of a series of strategic projects that included new dedicated bus and bike lanes, bus stop improvements, and our fleet electrification. Next slide. Our final paradigm shift was rebranding to highlight that public transportation is more than fixed route city bus services. Yes, it's the cornerstone of what we do as a regional provider and connector to regional systems, but we need to highlight all of our mobility services that we provide so they can grow. Our city ride services are about local, first and last mile services. Our city share services include our share programs like scooters, bikes, and maybe cars one day, as well as our city ride share and a future city ride transportation demand management program. Finally, our city fleet services buy, build, and maintain vehicles for the entire city, including fire, police, city bus, refuse, and all. Next slide. Finally, in our ground floor year, we also implemented and introduced a foundational piece of technology to our community, our Next CC Bus app, making it easier for everyone to use our system. Our riders are now able to see and predict the next city bus or city ride vehicle arrival. Next slide. We are now in year 2 of our strategic plan, completing our prioritized goals and objectives, which evolved around performance planning and strengthening our skills. We labeled fiscal year 21 as a year of planning for change. Our number 1 priority was to develop and implement KPIs for all of our services. The next 3 goals were the planning of bus-only lanes, battery electric buses, bus stop improvements. And the next 6 of our top 10 priorities were all about the building of our skills with business process reviews, project management, service planning, conducting a facility condition assessment, financial analysis, and continuing to evolve our vision, mission, and core values. We've just established our fiscal year 22 priorities, and they continue with the same and add the tactical implementations. Fiscal year 22 is labeled a year of action. Next slide. This coming year, we will go live with our 3 miles of dedicated bus and bike lanes, our new local first and last mile connections through our new citywide circulator service, and an introduction of a K through 12 fareless system. Quarter 2 will be bringing into service our new battery electric buses and completion of a long-term electrification infrastructure plan. Quarter 3 will include more electric vehicles, an introduction of our new operations workforce management solution, a 10-year financial plan, and hopefully fareless systems for low-income riders. Finally, in quarter 4, our journey continues with the introduction of microtransit, the completion of our bus stop improvements, and expanding our bus and bike lanes in 2 other corridors within our city. Next slide. I want to leave you with one last thought and a request. For us, it began with our vision of reimagining mobility and coming up with ways to make our individuals' visions happen. We keep each other motivated, and being a small city had to expand our bandwidth by bringing on lots of interns and a few contract employees. As we move forward with electrification with the goal of fully electrifying by 2028 and dedicated bus lanes for first last mile services, we could use your support. I ask that you please continue supporting programs that help us with the increased costs of electric vehicles and add more financial support for the infrastructure that we need now. I would also add to help us make it easier to use other electric vehicles for first last mile services, like a low speed vehicle that could carry 15 to 20 people. Today, California legislation limits a low speed vehicle to under 3,000 pounds, and there are other solutions that can include lightweight vehicles and dedicated bus lanes at low speeds with clean electricity at a fraction of the cost of a bus. So thank you, and I'm here to and open to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your recognition as Transit Agency of the Year. I look forward to visiting and touring these live. Are there any comments from our commissioners and ex officio members? Okay, well, and I see no public comment, Justin, is that correct?
No, Chair, no, not at this time.
That's great. Well, then, thank you very much, Mr. Cruz, for your great presentation.
Thank you.
I'm very excited for our first Equity Advisory Roundtable update by one of our Equity Advisory Roundtable members, Naila Pope Harden. I want to make sure that you all know that after Naila's presentation that we will be taking a break for lunch and resuming our meeting. Naila, welcome, and it's so exciting that you're making the first ever presentation on behalf of the Equity Advisory Roundtable. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me turn again. Naila Pope Harden with Climate Plan and also member of the Equity Advisory Roundtable. I believe I was selected to speak because Climate Plan has been a part of the Equity Roundtable and committee discussions. I think we submitted our first letter about requesting some type of body like this in March of last year. So it's amazing to see the amount of conversations and efforts that have happened in the last year. I want to echo some of the enthusiasm at the beginning of the meeting that Chair Norton and Director Owen-Shakin had around just the future of mobility and transportation. The state, there's a lot of great opportunities moving forward, and I think it's really important to frame this Equity Advisory Roundtable effort as one of the big parts of helping move that forward. I think if we're really talking about how to sustain some of these changes and make sure they're equitable, then making sure that this advisory roundtable and then subsequent committee are bolstered and empowered is going to be really important and great for our state. So I'm just going to give a quick kind of recap on what happened at the meeting. We met April 21st. It was our first public meeting, and the meeting was accessible through the GoToMeeting webinar, YouTube, and webcast. There was about 3/4 of the Equity Advisory Roundtable members were able to be in attendance, And it opened up with very warm, welcoming remarks from Chair Norton, Secretary Kim, and Deputy Director Ward Waller. And then the meeting consists really of three major components. We talked about an overview of the transportation system. We got feedback on the draft charter for the Equity Advisory Roundtable. And then we also had a conversation about public engagement best practices. And I'm just going to call out a few of the highlights from those conversations. When we were talking about the scope and charter for the roundtable, one of the main concerns that came up is just making sure that we're working with a shared and common definition of equity that can help guide the roundtable and all equity work moving forward. There was also an emphasis around making sure that public engagement best practices aren't just about engaging the public, but they're also about shifting the paradigm and seeing how we can make sure that communities have some agency over the process and decision-making moving forward. And just also a more emphasis on actually doing actionable things and not just holding meetings, but turning equity into making it implementable and accountable. In the public participation best practices discussion, there were conversations about the digital divide and access for people who are disabled. One of the things that came up is even ways that the GoToMeeting webinar aren't accessible. And so there'll be further exploration about how to make our roundtable meetings more accessible. Folks on the roundtable expressed concerns about meeting communities where they are and about the government's general disconnect from tribal communities and how there needs to be better understanding and context for tribal communities. And let's see. And I think those are pretty much the general themes that came up. Overall, it was a really good and fruitful first discussion. The next meeting is going to be Wednesday, the May 26th at 1 o'clock. It again is going to be open to the public. And the goal at that meeting is to continue some of these conversations and come up with more solid understanding of what the charter for the roundtable will be and help solidify some more best practices for public participation.
Well, thank you for that wonderful summary, Naila. Commissioners, would you have any questions or comments on our very first Equity Roundtable meeting? Okay, Justin, are there comments from the public?
There's no public comment at this time.
I just personally want to say that it was a really wonderful conversation, and I want to thank you for your advocacy in asking for this roundtable to begin and the process for the 6 listening sessions throughout the year, as well as helping us as we're providing the equity statement and really living it out. And so, Naila, I just want to thank you personally for your efforts and advocacy with us. And we really look forward to this being a productive and really ultimately very thoughtful with actual metrics and projects that we can point to that said they came from these discussions. And having been there at that first meeting, it was a thoroughly fascinating conversation led by, statewide experts. And it's just wonderful that all the commissioners helped recommend these statewide experts in the field of equity. And thank you for your leadership in that regard.
Yeah, same. I feel the same way. Thank you so much. We have a bright future ahead for transit. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, with that, I am going to have a brief adjournment for lunch. We will come back at 12:30 and resume our items. We have a lot of discussion on CAPDI and ATP coming up ahead, so we're looking forward to our wonderful and productive afternoon. Thank you.